Oh no, Microslop is very mad. They shut down their Discord. You know, ladies and gentlemen, nothing brings joy to my heart than seeing the actual big corpo mad, because we're not dealing with their nonsense anymore. So again, this is just a goofy thing to start off with, but actually today's video is a little bit about defending Microslop. I know, coming from my channel, that's probably gonna blow your mind. It's like, wait a minute, the fat Indian guy has to defend them? Well, it turns out that, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I got a whole bunch of messages aimed towards me the last few days where everybody's like, Muda, did you hear about Windows 12? And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, Windows 12? What are you fucking talking about? They actually, wait, whoa. We have degraded Windows 11 so bad, you're telling me they're coming out with another Windows 12? So I decided to put on the research goggles and I looked down the rabbit hole so you don't have to, ladies and gentlemen. Is Microslop bringing the next evolution of slop towards you, or is this just bullshit and lies? Now, obviously, look, I think this video is going to be debunking some of the lies that we see from the big media talking about, shit. I think it's really easy to shit on Windows, okay? But I also don't think that what we're about to read is entirely wrong anyways. So anyways, for anybody that doesn't know, there is a site called PC World, and they talked about Windows 12. Now, obviously, as of now, they said the article they made is a translation of some German article by PC Welt, and it does not meet their standards and shouldn't have been published. Basically, these guys rely on auto-translators in their network, and for some reason, they just didn't even do basic fact-checking into seeing if Microsoft was announcing Windows 12, who was the fucking source for this. Remember, things get leaked in the technology game all the time. Sometimes the leaker is somebody totally reputable, and sometimes it's the crackhead, okay? Generally speaking, you don't want to take what the crackhead is saying and seriously whatsoever. There's a lot of crackheads I know that are telling me aliens are going to invade the next day. Would I like to make a video on it? Absolutely. Would I like to get probed by aliens? Absolutely. But you have to be able to understand what source you can and cannot take. So to give you an idea, here's what was actually kind of talked about, okay? One of them was apparently Windows 12 is going to be introducing, or actually they called it Hudson Valley Next, and apparently it was going to be built on something known as Core PC, which for anybody that doesn't know what Core PC is, it's kind of been announced years ago. It's kind of like the core operating system that powers Microsoft stuff, right? And again, it's usually something that is being built upon. So Core PC basically is at the center of everything Microsoft related, whether it be Windows, whether it be Xbox OS, whether it be anything in the AI game, whether it be anything with their Linux distributions. Yes, Microsoft does have their own Linux distributions. There's a core integral part. So they said that AI was apparently a foundation for the operating system, and they said that Copilot is evolving from an optional assistant to a central control instance. Operating system-wide will replace selective AI functions. Now, again, obviously this was scary as well. Anybody that has used Copilot will probably tell you it is basically white-label ChatGPT, and in my opinion, I think ChatGPT is the fucking worst AI that you can probably get your hands on, okay? It's actually a lot better for you to use shit like probably Grok, because at least it's connected to recent sources. Something like Claude, anything but ChatGPT, okay? I would trust the crackhead sooner than I trust ChatGPT. The other thing was the NPU requirement and minimum requirement of 40 tops. Now, what is a top, ladies and gentlemen? Well, you ever go to the store and you look at those Copilot Plus PCs? It's like the special brand of the Windows computers where the CPU has a little AI component added to it, so it can do local AI stuff instead of relying on the cloud as well too. Now, I'm usually a fan of this shit. I think if AI is going to exist, and it will in the world, instead of relying on us to go to these frontier AIs and give up our information, this shit should be happening locally on our device as much as it can, okay? I like using local AIs because anything that I see the big frontier guys do, I generally can do with about 80% of the efficiency with a local artificial intelligence, which honestly is great enough for me, and it means that I don't give up my data to some random Joe Schmo on the other side of the country, and they're able to scan my information and do God knows what with it, right? So the other thing was they were going to radically design it efficient, performant, and memory management, which again makes me fucking laugh because if anything, Microsoft might be more bloated than a boomer from Left 4 Dead, okay? Like this shit is insane. It's that bad. Anyways, you can see why I didn't immediately jump on this because again, I like to shit on Microsoft, but I like to shit on Microsoft while being 100% factual, okay? So I looked into what their sources for this shit was, and what was hilarious about it too was that it ended up being like a circular source. And what that means is basically they were sourcing to a source that kind of sourced to the original source. And again, if it sounds confusing, basically the original point of the story that I could find was something from like tech4gamers.com. And I looked through this for like all of 5 seconds and I realized, wait a minute, they're linking to PC World and they're just relinking the same information. There's like no actual source mentioned in this entire post. It's just insane. And again, obviously the guys at PC Gamers are like, yeah, we messed up with that Windows 12 articles. Yeah, we're sorry. Which again, it's fine, right? Like, you know, I'm glad that they apologized for it, but then I looked even further. So the actual like original point of the thread apparently came from like this Windows forum thing, where if you're looking at this thread, there's something that I like to call chat GPT eyes, where eventually you can see how things are formatted, like the M dashes, the constant fucking bullet pointing. This was written by Copilot probably. Copilot wrote this, I have to say. But here you can see that obviously they talk about Copilot being baked into the system, mandatory AI, and of course, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, things like subscription services. So instead of purchasing Microsoft Windows' license, you therefore buy a subscription service. Now, the reality of it is, I actually don't think this is so far off from the future of Microsoft, simply because if you just look at where Windows 11 is right now, it's already showing signs of whatever this AI slop, article brought out. The other thing is, literally last year, Microsoft talked about evolving into an agentic operating system. And what that basically means is that the future of Windows is not something where you use a keyboard and a mouse. The future, according to Microsoft, is you probably talk to your computer, right? You type a command, you type something in a natural language, and the computer will interpret that as a function, right? So instead of saying, hey, Microsoft, or instead of like going onto my computer, opening up the internet browser and then, searching for something, I just ask, Copilot, hey, Copilot, tell me something about what I'm looking for. And then it'll do all the searches for you. And then from there, you can say, oh, interesting. Can you put that into a blog post and then auto post that on the internet for me? Now, the goal is the AI is going to write a blog post, format it to HTTP standards, and then upload that file somewhere for somebody else to grab. All of this is done by an artificial intelligence that lets any human being do complicated tasks with just one command. Now, do I fucking believe that's the future? Microsoft definitely believes it's the future, but I think it's going to lead to a world where more of this misinformation happens. The only reason this Windows 12 video happened is because the internet now is basically just a level of slop that we could never honestly imagine before. 10 years ago, the internet, honestly, probably 15, 16 years ago, when we looked at things like deep web browsing or nostalgic web browsing, it was always funny because you could see human written stuff on the internet, right? Like human beings were actually writing the HTML, posting that on the internet. Now, it seems like most of the sources that you find on the internet, most articles, most even forums, right? Like it's crazy. Like I stopped reading forum threads. I stopped reading things like, image boards simply because it felt like every other post was somebody using ChatGPT to make the posts. One of the things that sucks a lot, and you might actually experience this in your life, is reading emails. Emails are some of the worst offenders because it seems like everybody that uses an email service, and anytime somebody sends a professional email, it's usually almost always written with a fucking Copilot-like tool. Somebody just feeds the AI like, these are my bullet points, the AI writes it for you, and you just feel the lack of humanity in that, right? Like usually by the second sentence, you could probably identify what large language model used it. I'm at a point where if somebody sends me a professional email, right? like if you want to get like sponsored, if you want to like collaborate, if somebody sends me a professional email and I fucking notice that AI wrote it, immediately you are on the block list, okay? Not only are you on the block list, but I probably just send that email to every other person that I've worked with and I show them, listen, this guy is not real, okay? This is a fucking clanker. And that's pretty much what it has come down to. The internet, in my opinion, as is most online communication, slopped out to a point where it just feels like every time you're just talking to an LLM for most days. And honestly, like, it's because of that I just have detached mostly from the internet. I've detached mostly from social media to the point where, like, again, it's just, I talk only to, like, people that I know now in real life, okay? People like Amari, people like Kyle, people like Tyler, people like Carson, people that I know as friends in reality. There are no online communications that I can have. Dude, it's to a point where, like, even if you argue with somebody online, it's like, bro, are you arguing with a human being or are you arguing with Claude? Are you arguing with ChatGPT? There's just no point to the online stuff. Even the comment sections to this video, as any video on YouTube, I have to always triple check if I'm actually like getting a comment from a human being or a fucking AI. And that's honestly sad. Like, it actually zaps away some of the enjoyment for me on this platform. But anyways, all of this stuff aside, Microsoft Windows 12 is not announced. It's not even leaked. It's not even hinted at. If anything, if you want the real factual understanding, Microsoft is planning to fix up their operating system really hard this year, okay? Like, Windows 11 has faced so much consumer backlash, and it's faced so much shit, rightfully so, that the only logical thing Microsoft can do is actually declutter, debloat, and fix up probably their crown jewel. But ultimately, I don't think that's really a thing, because if you look at market caps for a lot of these companies, like a lot of the top companies, Microsoft is ranked at number 4, basically sitting at $4.1 trillion as of right now, Canadian. That number would have been unbelievable like years ago. But a lot of these companies are propped up because of how much money they've put into artificial intelligence. Microsoft basically banks on Windows becoming an AI-ridden piece of shit, because if it doesn't, they lose a lot of money in the process. Already, this bubble is starting to burst to a point that people are genuinely questioning if it even has a future. I saw the other day Nvidia was thinking to themselves, do we keep putting billions of dollars into this pile of shit, or do we just cut our losses and call it quits? And I think that's a reality for a lot of these companies going forward. This is not a sustainable model. If AI fails, and it probably will one day because the bubble has to pop or deflate, a lot of these companies like Microsoft literally have to go back and fix Windows 11 before they even conceive Windows 12. Because if you destroy your keystone product right now, simply because you wanted to chase the AI dragon, you'll actually have fucking nothing down the road. And you know, the other thing that really baffles me too about this whole situation as well is that layoffs around the country, specifically the US, have reached a pace that is actually worse than, from what I understand, the 2008 financial crisis. A lot of companies have put their eggs into this AI basket. They've reduced the amount of people working, and they've kind of realized that AI isn't exactly perfect. Some companies like IBM have actually had to start hiring people again, because they're like, wait, this wasn't really the great replacing tool that we thought was going to change everything. And so that's also put pressure on companies like Microslop, because they need this to be successful. That's why all these companies hate it when you're so negative about AI. Because the moment you actually bring reality up, a lot of these guys have to fucking cope and seethe at what the eventual future for this is. So there is a silver lining to all of this. It will actually come crashing down. And trust me, when it does, there will be nobody happier shitting on the street of Microsoft than this fucking guy right here. Simple as that. Again, also when it comes to things like AI slop these days too, one of the things that also came up was apparently people falling for shit like this. YouTube will require government ID to access the comment sections. One thing that also burns me about this too is, like, AI has ruined, to an extent, I feel like most of the internet has just ruined people's ability to critically think. Nobody's able to click one account and simply look at their bio and say, wow, that was a parody account. Maybe YouTube's like actual, like, maybe YouTube's like, maybe YouTube's image has gotten so bad that people just believe this shit. But again, people aren't even able to parse anything like this anymore. People aren't able to, like, critically think, which is actually a pretty saddening thing. Now, the other thing about like companies like Microslop is while a lot of these companies are pushing artificial intelligence and pushing bloated operating systems, I think when we're reaching a point where people are downloading tools like Winslop, yes, this is a real application people are using to debloat Microsoft's Windows operating system. And this is one of the reasons why I don't use Windows. Like, I don't care much about it. This is why I make these videos, because every time Microsoft updates something in Windows, it breaks like 10 things. And it's because of that it serves as probably the best advertisement to Linux. I don't understand why somebody goes out of their way to de-slop Microsoft. If you're at a point where you're downloading tools to gut and surgically remove parts of Windows, maybe you should consider using a different operating system, right? Like maybe at that point, you should just use the alternative that's available. I think the future, given all the laws and regulations that we've seen, is going to pressure Microsoft into doing things that they probably didn't even want to do that'll actually make Windows worse, like age verification laws and online-only bullshit being pushed further and further. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, it's just hilarious to me to see. I had to actually unironically defend it. No, Windows 12 is not a thing. It's not a thing for now. But I think the AI slop that we read does have some kernels of truth worth focusing on, right? Microsoft is such an AI-reliant company that whatever they release in the future will be reliant on that stuff. And ultimately, it's up to you if you want to ditch it or you want to stick onto it. There's a lot of people that are complaining about Windows 11, and I can't imagine those claims will be alleviated because I think whatever the fuck 12 will be, when Microsoft reveals it, will be worse than whatever 11 is, especially in the field of AI and the constant enshittification of their platform. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and yeah, hopefully you like what you saw. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.